Hi guys, Al here. Welcome back. Today I have a quick review for you. This is going to be a review of the Marseille Tarot, Towards the Art of Reading by Camelia Elias. I'm so sorry if I'm saying her name wrong. I probably am. Camelia Elias? Something like that. She does have a wonderful website that's been around for a while, actually. The blog is called Tarotflections. CameliaElias.com, I think it is. I'll put a link below. Sorry, I forget to put my links below sometimes, by the way. I totally just forget. But anyway, I will try to put that down there for you. So this is a book I actually had to go back and reread before doing this review. I think I had it in my head that this was going to be something a little bit different than what it was. And I think a lot of people have that reaction after they read this book, too. They're like, it's not what I thought that was going to be at all. I think part of the reason is that a lot of us, who are interested in Marseille are really looking for books that sort of cover everything and maybe get very detailed and esoteric, and because there's just not a lot of information on Marseille reading and the Marseille decks, and especially from readers, or anything that really helps you, learn how to read Marseille. But what this book is, and I'm very grateful for it. I really did enjoy it. And she comes at this book, how she reads tarot, which is this sort of a folk method. She calls it the cunning folk method. And what it involves is more of a practical interpretation of the cards. There's no esoteric principles here at all in how she views the tarot. It's like a very sort of a common sense approach. It's almost like what a lot of tarot readers have when they say that they just take an intuitive approach. Say they use a Rider-Waite-Smith deck and they maybe haven't read much about the tarot cards, but they can lay the cards and give you like the most fucking accurate, amazing tarot reading. And they do this without knowing, any of the meanings really behind the card. It's like they just make these connections. It's common sense. You look and you say, that's what this means to me, that's what this means to me. And you don't have to know that if you drew the High Priestess or something, that she's all about secret knowledge and intuition. It may be something as simple as she's looking this way or she's holding this, and that's just what you pick up on. She combines what she calls this cunning folk method of reading the cards, which is this is from the back of the book, which is based on making logical inferences about the meaning of the cards, and the visual argument method, which relies on the subjective and individual art of perceiving. And it's an absolutely amazing way to read the tarot, and it's actually something that I have always tried to incorporate into my readings. I don't think that would ever be the be-all, end-all of my readings. That's just not how I work. But I think, if you look at all the different ways that you can read tarot, right? You can pull out these big spiritual messages from the cards. You can pull out psychological messages, and you can pull out very practical, specific happenings. And I think to get to that side of things, you're not interpreting symbolism. You're just looking at the simple picture on the card. That's where those messages line up. To get a surface, mundane, practical reading, you look at the surface of the cards. Does that make sense? I've always liked that idea. So after I started reading the book and got through, and I was like, it's not necessarily what I was really looking for. I took a deep breath and I was like, all right, let's try that again now that I know what I'm getting myself into. And I went back through and I reread, and I really appreciated, what I was getting out of it. One of the greatest things that you'll find in this book is the examples of her classic folk tarot readings. Don't you guys just love watching other people interpret the cards? That can be so good. And she gives great tarot readings. They're all very very practical for the most part. She gets deeper and stuff. It's not like it's just, yo, meet a man tomorrow and get married. No, there's layers upon layers, but it is sort of more towards that side of things. It's that folksy sort of way of reading tarot. But she goes through, she gives you a lot of readings. She talks about how she reads the tarot, and actually she talks a lot about the deck that she uses to illustrate this book, the Carolus Zoya Marseille deck, and it's fucking beautiful, you guys. This book is worth getting just to see the amazing pictures of this tarot deck. It's phenomenal. And then right around page 36 here, she jumps into, I can't see the camera. All right, that's as good as it's getting. She jumps into the trumps, and she gives you a little reading that utilizes each trump. And then she gives you a little bit about the card and some keywords, some of their functions, health indicators, how that card is in public life. So, for example, what card am I at here? This is the Wheel of Fortune. So the Wheel of Fortune with the Magician in public life could represent a mentalist. Wheel of Fortune with the Moon, instability. With Death, funeral. With Devil, a casino. You know, things like that. Now these are obviously all her own, how she views the tarot. And it's cool to see other people's take on things like this. I enjoy that. In some instances, she'll give you a bit more of the traditional meaning of the card, but for the most part, it's like a quick couple paragraphs on how she views it, and it's sort of odd actually to read some of this stuff, because we are so accustomed to at least having some of that esoteric interpretation there, and to have it stripped of that almost feels a little bit wrong. You know, and it can be, you know, if this is not how you view the tarot, this is not a way that you like to read, then this isn't a book for you. But if it's something, you know, if it's wholly how you read, this is fantastic for you. It'll be nice to have reference from someone else on how they do the same thing. And if it's something that you try to incorporate into your readings, then I think it would be fantastic. But she goes through all 22 of the major arcana, and then just after 110 or around page 108, it starts with the court cards and the suits. Now she does not go through each and every card. She talks about color and number. You know, it's that kind of playing card logic. Ooh, you know what? That's a really good example, actually. The way that she reads Marseille is the way that I think a lot of us go about reading playing cards or reading Lenormand, you know, where it's more this folk kind of tradition, and it's very much all about what's a blunt reading of the cards, and this is that, so this means that, you know, like very, very blunt, and where the image on the card sort of tells you exactly what's what. And that is certainly how I tend to approach reading with, it's a part of the tarot readings. If you want to get specific and practical with the tarot too. So I like to incorporate that into the reading. It's almost like you have to just take a step back, turn your brain off for a second, and just look. You know, that's got to be, for me, part of my tarot reading. But when it comes to just reading with like playing cards, where basically all you've done when you're reading with playing cards is you've removed the major arcana, more or less, shush, knights, whatever, but you basically just removed the biggest spiritual suit, and all you're left with are like your four elements of the world. So that automatically, boom, my head goes, this is more practical, this is more day-to-day, this, you know, that's where I go with that. And when you're reading with, you know, a Piquet deck or like a Lenormand deck, where it basically is the playing card deck with some cards removed, the 2s through the 5s or whatever it may be in whatever deck you're working with, it's like you've done away with the major arcana, and you just have, you know, the practical minors left behind, these worldly concerns. So you tend to go about reading that a little bit differently, you know. And that's more or less her approach to the entire tarot with this book. She even says here, you know, this is some of her Marseille Tarot logic. Ready? Cups filled with red wine and copper coins make our hearts beat faster. We exchange them to feast or to buy things we need. So she's talking about the cups and the coins, or the hearts and the diamonds, if it were playing cards, the red suits. And then she says, brown batons and black swords bring on fear. We fight with them to death. We fight with them to death or to win a competition. She's just explaining the differences in the suits, you know? She says, with spades we stab, with clubs we build, with diamonds we cut deals, with hearts we drink with friends and family. If something goes from red to black, it's bad. If something goes from black to red, it's good. And the same thing can be applied to the tarot and to their suits. And then she just talks a little bit about numbers, nothing big, it's just a couple pages. It's this idea, you've probably heard it before, like 1 is a little, 10 is a lot. She does give you like a little one sentence, what side is it on? Like a little one sentence explanation. Can you see that? On each of the numbers. You know, 9s are changes, 8s are wishes and fears, aces, and then court cards. It really is, it's this very folksy method, and it's fascinating. You're not going to have any sort of spiritual revelations reading this book. It has nothing to do with that. It is a very practical, this is how I read the tarot, take a look, enjoy, see for yourself. That's what it felt like. Like she just let us into her little tarot reading world. But that's the best part of this book by far, listening to her readings and seeing how she makes these connections. I don't think any of the meanings that she's given to any of the cards or anything that I'm really gonna take for myself. It's not necessarily a book like that. It might be for you. There may be some things that that you really like, you know, as far as her interpretations go, that you may hang on to for yourself for future use. But for me, I think the best thing about reading this, besides, you know, hearing her readings and having fun listening to her tarot card readings, was just this big reminder to myself that this should be a part of my readings. I've always thought it should be, and it was just like a little smack in the face, you know, remember to stay practical at times, and don't forget that these are cards laid out before you. Don't forget to take a fucking look at them every once in a while and see what that fucking literal picture in front of you is telling you. Because I've been known to forget. I go off into esoterical land and I'm like, oh, the angels are singing to you, and it just means it's time to walk your dog or something, you know? It's one of those things. You may find yourself while you're reading the book going, I don't agree with you. No, stop. And that's okay, you know? You don't have to agree with authors on absolutely everything. I know I very, very rarely do. Even my favorite books, I'm like, that part you can sort of keep. And I think, you know, some of her views on esoteric associations and spirituality in the cards, I get a little defensive because I fucking love that shit. I think it does work so well. But, you know, whatever. She never really, like, shits on anything. She's never rude about it. There's this one part that I actually do really like. There's this one part that I found very thought-provoking. I really enjoyed it. It's where she talks about ethics in a tarot card reading. You know, she says, a concern regarding posing questions. Is it nice to stick your curious nose into other people's cauldrons? You know, what does he think of me is a classic. And she writes, the camps are divided on this. The ones into, you know, reviving this fortune-telling tradition, they don't give a damn. And the ones into spiritual growth will instruct you that you had better stick to your own. She says, I have no opinion about either of these, simply because I don't think it's for me to judge what others find appropriate for themselves to know. I answer all the questions. I don't even flinch when someone wants to know whether they will meet the devil or not. From a storytelling perspective, all questions are good beginnings. They are fascinating and worth answering. The ideal is to begin in tolerance and end in balance. And I just love that. One of the things I've spent the last a few years making changes to is how I used to try and rephrase everybody's question every time they came to me for a reading. And what ended up happening was I'd be fucking pissing people off. I'm like, you can't ask that, you know, no, that's a yes or no question. Like, I was getting frustrated with everybody's questions. For a long time too, I tried not to answer questions about other people. And you know, why are people, if I'm not going to answer your questions, why are you here, you know? So the last few years I had this whole restructuring of how I approach, you know, asking questions to the tarot and other people asking questions. I really don't rephrase anybody's questions now. You want to ask a yes or no question, we can do that. We can get a yes or no answer, or we can, you know, get an answer and more information. Like, I understand what you're trying to ask here, and the tarot is going to answer it how the tarot is going to answer it, and I'm just going to read it. So I actually really liked that she didn't really have an opinion, and I feel the same way. If that's what you want to know, let's explore that. You know, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with telling a story about our lives, which includes other people's lives and how they connect to us, even if it seems unconnected. Does that make sense? Yeah, so I definitely don't agree with everything, but there were definitely times reading this book where I was like, amen, sister. Yes, I like that. It really is. It's a fascinating read. All right, guys. I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.